Welcome to the Deputy Business Training Insights, Business Insights training session. Sorry, what a way to start. We're top of the hour, have a lot of attendees with us, so let's get started. Charts. Perfect. My name is Felix, and I'm a Customer Success Manager here at Deputy, and I'm also joined by my colleague Charles today, who's going to help me out with this. Perfect. We're going to deep dive into the business insights today. Specifically, we're going to cover the different ways to put sales data in, how to set up your point of sale integrations. We're also going to talk about budgets and forecasting. And finally, how to use the required staff and labor modeling. And as usual, at the end of our training, we'll be running a Q&A session, but you can also ask your questions throughout the training. And here is how. We can't really answer any questions in the chat, so please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window. It's on the right side where it says Q&A, and ask your questions there. We will be, we'll try to answer as many of them as we can, and we'll also pick out the best ones that we then address in the Q&A section at the end of the training. Just make sure to please not answer any very, account-specific questions that are, specific for your account, so that we can use them in the webinar and that they will help everyone. Perfect. With that said, I'm going to give to my colleague Charles to start today's training.
Thank you, Felix. And hello, everyone, and welcome back to our training sessions. Before we start, I believe we have several new users of Deputy who may not know what we are and what we do. Deputy is a comprehensive, time-based and attendance platform that includes scheduling, timesheets, digital clock-in, and today's schedule, business insights. We are entirely cloud-based. That means that you can access Deputy anywhere and on any device. We do have apps with the Google Store and the App Store, and we do also integrate with all major payroll, point of sales, and HR systems, from Xero to Red Cat, passing to Bamboo. Here at Deputy, we work across many different industries: hospitality, retail, healthcare, education, professional services, and security, among many others. And we also cover, all type of businesses, from your local mom and pop store to your local cafe to the bigger ones such as Bunnings. Now, before we get into the meeting greedy, I will jump into a test account that we have created just for this training. So just give me 1 second. There we go. So welcome everyone to our test account. Before we get into the business insights, I'll show you how to access your business insights. So when you first log into Deputy, this is your homepage, the Me tab. From here, to access business insights, all you have to do is click on Schedule right here. And usually your schedule will show up like this. So now let's click on Stats. As you can see on Stats, the page is now divided into two. We have the schedule at the bottom here, and at the top we have graphs, and on the left, a weekly total. The stats shown here and the weekly total show the different metrics you can input in the business insights. At the bottom of the weekly total, you can click on the metrics, and a window will appear showing you the different metrics we have. So by default, we have staff, wages, and sales, but you can also create your own metrics. Here we have created pastries and coffee. You can also select to view certain type of metrics in regards to the others. And to do that, all you have to do is click right here to not see staff anymore, here not to see wages, and maybe here just not to see sales, or just click again so they can show up. Now that we've went through the stats, there are two ways to access business insights. You can either click here, View Business Insights, and this will take you to the Business Insights homepage. Or on the stats button on the right, there's a downward arrow. If you click on that, there's here as well, View Business Insights. Now, welcome to your summary page, everyone. Here, this page will basically is a summary of your hours, your wages, the sales, and the labor percentage. This is kind of like your me tab of the business insights. And this is where also you can see the different metrics you can input. Now let's start by one of the most important ones, sales. So let's click on sales. Before we start inputting numbers, you can see at the center right here and here that you can select different areas. Here in our example, we have manager, barista, register, head chef, and kitchen hand. This is mostly useful for if your business is in hospitality and or retail. As for example, you might have your cafe that might be running one payroll system, and your kitchen that might be using an independent payroll system. That way you can input different data for the different areas. If you don't need, if you do not need sales per area, you can either create a sales area within your schedule or just put all your sales in one area. Here, in our case, we'll just select the manager area. You can also select to view it by day, week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and a month. And you can select here the dates. Now let's click on Edit Data. So you can see here in the Edit Data that we have 3 different categories: Deputy Forecast, Manager Forecast, and Actuals. In the Deputy Forecast, this is what Deputy thinks your sales are going to be. You cannot put anything in those areas. As you can see, they're all grayed out. This is more in the future. The more data you feed to Deputy, the better the forecasts will be. Now, let's go into Manager Forecast. Manager Forecast is the sales that you forecast you will do. This means that these are the sales that you think you should be doing. And then we have the actual, and the actual are the actual sales that you are doing. One way to differentiate the both of them is think of the manager forecast as your theory. In theory, for this day, I should be doing X amount of sales. While the actual is, in reality, for this day, I am doing Y amount of sales. You can input your data in different forms. You can either just put it in the total, or if you work on a with an hourly budget in hourly wages, you can input it manually in the different areas. So you can see here 9, 10, 11. This is like at the beginning, this is especially useful for anyone that's in the hospitality, retail industries. As if you're a cafe, you might have your 9 a.m. rush, which you know is going to be a big day. And then later on at 11, it could be quiet. 12, you have the lunch rush, and so on and so on. If you don't want to work with the hours, you can completely ignore them and just put the total on top. The way you can input the data is either by hand, like I showed you, or you can, if you have a CSV file of all your sales, you can just copy and paste it. For example, here we have a prepared sales file that we have just for this example. All I have to do is drag, copy, go back to my edit sales, and delete this and paste. Then we see that it automatically has filled up and the totals have been automatically calculated at the top. What works here in the actuals works as well for the manager forecast. So this is the second way. The other way we have is through our integrations. Now, Deputy in Australia has 11 direct integrations. To access those, all we have to do is go back to your locations, select your location. So for us, it's Tony's Cafe. Go to Edit Settings, Notification and Integration. Now we wait while this loads. Perfect. So here are the different notifications and integrations. This is not what we're looking for. What we're looking for is here in the edit services. And here you can see the different services we use. So like I said, we have 11 direct integrations. What this basically means is through the click of a button with those 11 direct integrations, Deputy will feed its data to your point of sale software, and or your point of sale software will feed their data to Deputy. If you can't find your point of sale software, so if you're not using Red Cat, Square, and so on, what you can do is contact your point of sale representative. As we have an open API, that means that we can create a bridge between our two softwares. Or the final solution is to use Dropbox. So for that, all we have to do is click here on Dropbox, click on Continue. And if we scroll to the bottom, we shall see that there it is, new CSV, call API, new photo, Dropbox. And this is the most important one, sales CSV file, create sales. So this what this basically will do is, if you authorize it, once you have a new sales CSV file in Dropbox, it will create the sales in Deputy. However, there is a caveat with this method. In Dropbox, there are two files in the Dropbox folder that do not need to be deleted. These two files must never be deleted. If those files are deleted, the integration will not go on. And for you to be able to reintegrate with Dropbox, you will have to terminate the integration on the Deputy side and then reauthorize it again. And finally, manually, as I've shown you before. Now let's go back to our business insights. So we click back on schedule and let's go stats, view business insights. And this is our sales. The sales in Deputy are very useful, especially the actuals, for everything that's in regards to reporting. Please note that Deputy is not a reporting tool. We do offer reports. However, if you want to do very specific, we recommend you use those specific reporting tools. Now that we've gone through sales, let's have a look at budget. I went a little too fast on that one. So the best way to explain the budget would probably to create a budget together. So let's do that. First of all, we'll click on Add Budget. Here, it will take you to a new window where you can select what you are budgeting, if you are budgeting hours or wages. So the hours, as the explanation says, is to set a budget for the number of hours rostered in a period. While for the wages, is to set a budget for the cost of wages, including leave and salaries in a period. So we can select different one we want. So let's go with hours for this case. The budget period, so we can set if we want a daily budget or a weekly budget. And then something that we just developed and just proposed today is set up a budget for each area right here. If you click on that, you can set a budget for your manager area, for your kitchen hand area, in the case of our example, or if you're a cafe, for front of house, back of house, kitchen, and so on. Then all we have to do is click on Done. And the way it works is the budget, whether it be hours or wages, it compares those budgeted wages or hours to the scheduled ones and shows you the variance. So for our example, we established the schedule already. However, when I created our budget, I did not put anything in the hours. That's why you see a variance of minus 2250. And if you hover over it, you get a percentage, which is really, really cool. The budget is very useful for a feature that is still in development, which is called the auto scheduling. This basically means that you can tell Deputy to create a budget according to your you could create a schedule according to your recommendations for budget, whether it be for hours or wages. If you wish to change your budget, since now you have created it, all you have to do is go to hours budget settings. Then you can change it to weekly and change this budget by location or area, or even delete it if you wish. Always be sure to click on save, otherwise it's not going to save. Now that we've done the budget, let's go to the last part, the staff. Staff is divided into two different areas, labor model and required staff. The easiest way to explain it is to start at the bottom with the required staff. So let's do that right now. So first of all, let's edit the data. So like you can see, like in staff, you can select your week, you can select your time frame and edit data. What this is here we can tell the software that, for example, at 6 a.m., if I'm running a cafe, I need 2 people to open the cafe. At 7, beginning of my rush, I need 3 people, so I just input 3. At 8, I still need 3. At 9, let's say morning rush is getting slower, I just need back to 2 people. And then at 10, I can have just 1 person, just for admin and daily attendance. And so why do we have a total of 29? And usually it calculates, but just let me check. Just let me quickly refresh, as this page seems to be bugging a little. I apologize for that, people. Edit. Oh, well, I came back to the other ones. So we had 2, 3, 3, 1. And from here, we click on save. And you can see, so this is 5, and this is 9. Perfect. Now, this is where it gets a little complicated. Let's click on back. And you can see in your summary page, this will show up as 9 hours, but you did not schedule for 9 hours, as it's only a couple hours in the morning. What this says is that you told Deputy that between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m., you need 9 people to work 1 hour. Even though in reality, it could be 1 person doing a 6 to 9 a.m. shift, another one doing a 7 till 11 shift, and so on. But for Deputy, for this moment, it needs to budget 9 hours worth of 9 times 1 hour of salary, so 9 hours. So the required staff is basically how many people I need for this particular hour. Now let's go to the labor model. And let's create a new rule. Now the labor model, like the budget and the required staff, this is as well very helpful for auto scheduling. You are basically giving Deputy rules to do your job for you. Now let's create a new rule. And in this pop-up window, we'll see that there's different things that come up. So we have coverage, area, metric, and so forth. So let's start with the area. That's the easiest part. So since in this example, our areas are named after job titles, think of it as, let's just select manager. Now in the minimum, think of this as a very quiet day. You need at least 1 manager in your store. So we'll select 1. Now for the maximum is exactly the opposite. Think of your busiest of busiest days. For example, you're in retail, it's Christmas rush, and you're doing sales. You need everybody to be present and everybody to be at 100%. And so you might need 3 people, 3 managers for that specific period. So these are 2 rules that you already created, that you want Deputy to always have 1 manager and a maximum of 3 managers. However, in order to have your 3 managers, you need to have set conditions for those managers. And one of those conditions could be that for every $1,000 of sales forecast in 1 hour, add 1 manager. So this here says sales forecast, but you can change this in the metrics right here. So you can decide for sales actual. In the case of our example for coffee, actual or forecast, or pastries, actual or forecast. It's up to you, up to personal preferences. Some people prefer forecast, some people prefer actual. And then from there, you decide a time period. Is it within the operating hours? So if you're open from 9 to 6 p.m., do you want this rule to apply just for that or any time? So if you click here on this button, you can see your operating hours, which is always good help. And now below, if you click with operating hours, you have add buffers. So this basically means that, yes, you are officially open from 9 a.m. till 6 p.m., but in reality, people start working at 8:30 because they need to open up, prep everything, and be sure so that at 9 a.m. when they open the door, there is no time wait to sit for the clients. And once you have your rule, you can click on Save. So this was just with the linear coverage. Now, arraign coverage just adds more precision to deputy. So from $0 to $1,000 in sales forecast, add one manager. From, let's say, $1,001 to $2,000, I want two managers, and so on and so on. So you can really, really detail what you need for deputy to calculate. And once you've done that, click on Save. And if you already have a rule, it will show up at the bottom red saying you already have a rule for managers and sales. That means you can specify for a different area. I could create one for barista, in sales forecast, or in coffee, and so forth. Now, before I pass it on over to Felix for the Q&A, let's just recap what we did. So what we did is we showed you how to access the business insights from me, schedule, view stats, business insights, or metrics, business insights. We showed you the sales, how to input them, how we integrate with different point of sale software, the difference between manager forecast and actual. And I will repeat this, in our reports, we do use the actual numbers. So that's make sure that you understand the difference between a forecast, which is a theory, and the actual, which is reality. And then from there, we went into more of what we could call programming deputy to work for you, which is the budget, whether it be an hourly budget or a wage budget, and required staff and labor model. And with all that, I'll leave it back to you, Felix.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Charles. Yeah, we haven't had too many questions that came through. So with that said, now we got a few more. If someone, if you guys still have a few questions, we do have not just myself, but there's also a few colleagues of ours in the actual Q&A section that can answer this. So please feel free to, even now, while we're going through this, we actually have prepared a few questions that sort of over time came through from customers when we were onboarding them, etc. So we do have some backup questions that we can now go through. But if you have a question, please feel free to still use the Q&A section, as we have some colleagues who will be helping with that. And we can also then address them in the actual Q&A section now. Cool. With that said, the first thing I wanted to mention, maybe if you go back to the account, Charles, perfect. The first thing I wanted to mention is this tool, Business Insights, is something that is still in active development. So if you encounter any bugs or something that doesn't seem clear to you, or anything that that you think could be done better, please feel free to give us feedback. And I will show you now, or actually Charles is gonna do the clicking, how to give us feedback. So if you click on the help button on the right side, and then what is it, the fifth option? The fifth option where it says give us feedback. You can just click on there. And then I think it's 4 questions. So it asks you, what part of the product, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to, so that we can categorize it properly, just go through this and submit your feedback. Our product team really, really welcomes this, specifically because, as I said, this product is still in active development, and every feedback is welcomed. Awesome. Thanks a lot, Charles. 2 more things then you say before we address the questions. Charles mentioned already at the beginning, but this webinar and the Q&A that we prepared, and also the actual presentation itself, was mainly suited for hospitality and retail. That doesn't mean that you can't use this if you're in any of the other, industries that we serve. But this webinar itself is very specific to hospitality and retail. So there might be some questions that, might not apply to your business. If that's the case, please feel free to reach out to our support if you need any, help material or something like that. Cool. And the last thing, then we can get into it. We are not a reporting tool. So with that said, we do have reporting capabilities. and the business insights are one of them. We will also quickly touch on the reports afterwards, but there's sort of limits to what we can do with this tool. So we have certain clients who, have really specific reporting requirements, and with our out-of-the-box solution for business insights, this might not always 100% fit your needs. Perfect. Cool. With that done, let's have a look at the few questions that we prepared. So one that came up in the past with onboarding says, who can actually see those stats and business insights? And I think what might be helpful in this case, Charles, is if we could just quickly open up the access level help article, which shows us really well who actually can see reports, business insights, numbers in general. And to make this short, the two access levels that can do that are the location manager and the system administrator, right? So they are the ones that can see reports, that have access to pay rates, budgets, etc., and they can access the business insights. So if you have employees that are on an employee or supervisor level, they will not be able to see this. Cool. And then if we can jump back into the account. Now, another question that we hear every now and then is, can I get live insights? And that's a bit of a tricky one, because in order to get live business insights, we basically would need to make sure that the sales data that comes in is live, which is already the first problem, because that means you would have to basically on a minute-by-minute basis put sales data in order for it to be live. The other thing is you also need to basically approve the timesheets in real time as well, in order to keep them live. What we can do, however, is we can import the sales data every 15 minutes. I think this is sort of the shortest time frame that we have. And if you have a payroll software that we integrate with that supports this, right, that is always has to be a given, that they export the sales data every 15 minutes, then we can bring that in every 15 minutes. But it wouldn't, in that case, I guess it would be live in a way, but it's not on a minute-by-minute basis. Cool. Having a quick look at the Q&A. We do have, let's have a quick look. Can we allocate sales data to all locations instead of having to choose one? Yes, I think now it's probably a good time to show this, Charles. So if we go to sales, and a few things on that. When you go into sales data, this might be self-explanatory, but make sure on the left side where we see now we have chosen Tony's Cafe Sydney, that you are on the right location, right? So if you want to put sales data in for the cafe, make sure you've chosen that location. If you want to put it in for all locations, make sure to choose all locations. Or if you want to choose a different one, make sure you choose a different one. Do this before you press edit data, because otherwise then you are already in that location. So now we might have to wait for another second to go back. But yeah, if you can go back to Tony's Cafe, perfect. And then if we go into edit to have a quick look, yes. And the areas. So if you have sales data that you want to allocate to a specific area, just make sure you will choose that area there at the top. If you want to allocate it to multiple areas, or you say, I want to allocate it to the whole location, I want to allocate it to the whole cafe, there is a few options. So either you choose one of those areas that you have, right? So we have these 5 here: manager, barista, register, head chef, and kitchen hand. So you can choose one of those and then allocate the sales there. Or if you say, I don't want to allocate it to any of my areas, I want to allocate it to the overall location, you could create another area and call it sales. And then you allocate the sales data to that sales area. You wouldn't use it for anything else. You wouldn't roster anyone in there. You wouldn't create any timesheets for it, leave, etc. You would only use it to allocate the sales data. This is important if we're later on looking at the reports, which we will do at the end of the Q&A, the schedule versus timesheets versus sales report, because in there, obviously, it will then only show up in that one area. So if you want to separate it from all the other ones, we have to create a manual one. Perfect. Then what sometimes leads to confusion are the two differences, the differences between the forecasts and the actuals. So I think we probably should touch on this again. So there is 3 different types of sales that you can put in. In fact, 2 that you can put in and 1 that we by default do for you. The deputy forecast, that's why it's grayed out as well, is basically our algorithm that works with past data from your business, right? If we created this location here pretty new, so there is no previous data in there. That's why it's all grayed out. But if you've put in sales data in the past, even if it's a year ago or something like that, you will see that we will be working with those numbers in here. And then you have the manager forecast and the actuals. A lot of times people overlook this and they just leave it on what it was on by default. And let's say if it was on forecast, they then put the actuals and stuff like that. So make sure if you are a user that is using this, sales data input, that you actually use the right one. Obviously, the manager forecast is for forecasting. The actuals are for the actuals. Another thing that might be important to mention here is if we look at the reports later on, if you look at the schedule and you want to compare your sales data to your budget or something like that, we will always work with the actuals, looking backwards, right? So what you actually sold compared to what you actually spent on your staff members, not the actual forecast. I should have not used the word actual in this case, but not the forecast, right? So we will work with the actuals. I think, did we show how to import it from CSV, Charles? We did, right? Cool. So in here as well, it might be worth mentioning again. So this actually works like a CSV file, which means you can also, if you have your sales data in a CSV file, or if your point of sale software exports into a CSV file, you can just copy and paste, which is really, really helpful. It might be worth actually showing it again, just sort of really quickly. So you can go exactly in there and do a copy and paste job and literally bring it over into here. And then the total gets calculated based on that at the top. Cool. Amazing. What other question was there? Where can I see the employee costing panel and why do these numbers change during the week? That is a really good question that comes up all the time. So if we go back to the actual schedule, correct. So on the left side at the bottom, where you see the individual employees, you see there the hours and a dollar amount next to it. Now, there's a bit of explanation here needed. So the hours and the dollar amount, if you're looking forward, meaning you're looking at next week, let's say, those are the scheduled hours and the scheduled cost. If you're looking backwards, you're looking at last week, this is the timesheet hours and the timesheet cost. So basically, the way I always explain that is the reality replaces the theory. If we're in the middle of the week, like we are today, right? And you're looking at your current week, from Monday to Wednesday, we would take the actuals, the timesheet hours and timesheet cost. And then for today, up until Sunday, we would take the scheduled hours and scheduled cost and combine these. That is also the reason why this number would change throughout the week. It might be 15 hours at the beginning of the week, and halfway through it might be 15 and a half. And therefore the dollar amount changed with it. And then at the end of the week, it might be 16 hours and a whole different amount. So on an ongoing basis, the reality replaces the theory. Cool. Awesome. Then we have, can you explain the weekly summary in the scheduling tab? So, correct. So at the top, I think actually you went over this, right? So at the top, we do have the weekly total. This does change if you, or it is dependent on the view that you're looking at, right? So we've chosen the weekly view. If you choose to look at your schedule on a fortnightly basis, this will obviously be for a fortnight. In order to change the view, I think it might be also good just showing that quickly. You can do this here, right? There you can change the time frame. And also the view itself. So if you like to look at it by, say, employee, we don't have to do that now, Charles, but just to sort of show you this. That's the first thing. Then we show you the hours. We show you the wage and the sales, and then the labor percentage. And if you hover over it, like Charles now did with the mouse, it gives you a little bit more of an explanation. So it's a summary there, and then it shows you in more detail in the blue area. If you click on metrics, we see the individual metrics. You can either show or not show, so tick or untick basically, and also the colors that they're shown in the actual stats panel. Perfect. Cool. Can I see daily stats in Business Insights? Cool. I think we should go back into Business Insights quickly. There we go. And then probably, I mean, the question is, can I see daily stats? What do they mean by that? But I suppose probably they mean the daily, the budget that we can set up as daily or hourly. Which I think we showed, right? So you can do that in here. If you've chosen a daily, probably the other way around if you're asking this question. So if you've chosen a weekly one and you want to change that to a daily one, just make sure to use the hours budget settings at the top. And there you can change it. The first question actually is it from weekly to daily. So this might be, you might be looking at it and you see it in a weekly view and you're wondering why we showed it today in a daily view. This is where you can change this as well. And then underneath it, the budget by location or area. That was what Charles mentioned before. That is something that we've put into the product, I think at the beginning of this week. So it's fairly new. And now you can also look at the budget by area, not just by location. With that said, I think it might be worth it because we're looking at settings. If you can press save, Charles. It might be a good idea to look at the settings on the left side at the bottom. So in there, if you are in, say, the sales metric, like we are right now, and you want to change, you might want to make changes to that metric, you can click on the settings button on the left bottom side, and then you can change a few things, right? So what we can change here is actually what I mentioned before. You can change this from hourly to 15 minutes if you want to put in your sales data every 15 minutes. And then underneath it, we have the breakdown by area. If you don't want that, you can actually turn it off, and then it does it by location. If you scroll a little further down, we do have the forecasts in there. So if you want to say you want to exclude the deputy forecast, you don't want to see that. You only want to work with a manager forecast and your actuals, you can just turn the bottom one off. Or if you say, hey, I don't want my managers to do a forecast, I'm just going to use the deputy numbers and put the actuals in, that's all I need, then you turn the top one off and the other one on. Thanks, Charles. Yeah. Make sure whenever you change anything in a metric or in any place, a deputy for that matter, to always press the save button at the right top side. Perfect. Cool. Another question. So I think there was some things about integrations. So if I can't find my sales integration in the integrations list, can I still integrate my point of sale into deputy? I think it might be worth, Charles, showing the integrations help article that we have. Actually, I think it's deputy.com/integrations. Perfect. There it is. Amazing. Cool. Correct. So this actually, as an explanation, first of all, this is our integrations page. So on here, just make sure you choose the right region. Let's make sure we're in Australia. On the left side on our integrations page, if you just choose point of sale, should be the second one, then it shows you all the direct integrations that we have currently that we can integrate with, right? So those are 11 in the Australian market. Now, if yours is not on this list, don't worry. There's there's actually three things we can do. So obviously you can take the sales data from it and manually put it into the actual business insights, right? So you can do that manually. However, we also have an open API, which Charles mentioned before, where we allow companies to integrate into our software. So if you have a point of sale software that's not on this list, the first thing I would recommend is to reach out to them and ask them if they can integrate with us. We do have a specific API support team that would help them with that. And then they can build an integration into Deputy. If that is not possible, then we also have the option to use the Dropbox integration, which Charles mentioned before, where basically you just have to, either you have already a Dropbox account or just sign up for a free Dropbox account. I think you get 8 gigabytes or something for free, which should be definitely enough for the sales data. And in there, when you correct, thanks Charles for showing this. Once you've done that, just turn the Dropbox integration in Deputy on, connect it to that Dropbox account. Then we automatically will create a folder in your Dropbox account that's called Deputy Sales Data. In that folder, there will be 2 files there. One is a README and the other one is some sort of code. I wish I could read it. Just make sure to not delete both of those files out of that folder. Otherwise, it actually won't work. It would break the integration. And if that happens for whatever reason, just turn off the integration with Dropbox and then start it from scratch. And then the second time, please don't delete those 2 files that are already in there. Cool. And I see someone said here integrations. We are with Ideal POS located in NZ. Oh, that is a good question. I don't know the answer to that. Please reach out to our support for this, to be honest. I do know that Ideal POS that we can integrate with in Australia, but in NZ, yeah, please reach out to our 24/7 support for that. Awesome. Cool. Let's have a look. So what else do we have? The integrations we've shown. What type of sale platforms do you integrate with? That was also on that page. So please go to deputy.com/au/integrations. That will show you all of those. And then you can just see them by just click on point of sale, and those are all the point of sale ones that you need. What can we do if we're a business that doesn't have sales data? Like, for example, healthcare, I suppose, or something like that. As I said at the beginning, this webinar was, designed mostly for, retail and hospitality. If you don't have sales data, what we can do, maybe Charles, if you go back to the account, we should show how to create a custom metric. There was also another question that I think plays into this, where someone asked, where does the coffee metric come from? Can I have that in my account as well? First of all, where it comes from is we created it. It's a custom metric. You can just create that one under metrics. You probably in your account wouldn't have coffee, regular and large, and pastries. You would only have sales. Just underneath it, where Charles is right now, where it says add metric, you can just click on there and add a custom metric. Whatever metric that will be in your business, right? You can then choose a chart. First of all, a name, obviously, write that in there. Then you can choose a chart color. this would be the color in the stats panel in the schedule, right? So if you want that to show up as green or something like that, just make sure to choose green. The next thing is what type of metric is that? Should that be a currency? Do you want dollar value or do you want units? For example, in our coffee example, it could be both, right? Are we tracking the coffees based on dollars, or based on units that we actually sell? And then level of detail. Do you want this to use this hourly or every 15 minutes? And the last step again will be for this particular metric. Do you want deputy? Actually, I should start with a manager forecast at the top. So do you want a forecast in there that managers can put a forecast in, or only actuals? And do you want deputy with the algorithm to also, learn from the data that you put in and create a deputy forecast? Those are the two forecasting ones. Whenever it says manager forecast, that is for you to manually put in. And whenever it says only forecast, for the people of the product team on this call, we should probably change this to deputy forecast. But yeah, manager forecast is always you. If it only says forecast, that is deputy doing it for you. Cool. And that should also answer the second question. So that is where the coffee metric came from. We actually put that in here and created it for this particular webinar. Cool. Do I need to be a system admin in my point of sale account to be able to add the data? That is a very good question. Yes. So with I have to say this with a little bit of caution because I don't know every single point of sale software by heart. But most of the times you actually do need to be a system administrator, or at least have access to a system administrator account in your payroll software in order to make that connection with deputy, right? So if there's something like our employee access level or something like that, usually it wouldn't work. It would be a system administrator or something similar. Most of the times it's called system administrator. If not, if it doesn't work for whatever reason, please reach out to the person that created that account in your point of sale software, or reach out to your point of sale software directly to answer this. Cool. Now, what else do we have here? So I think we should also show, Charles, the report section for sales versus timesheets versus schedule. Now, if you want to look backwards, or if you want to track, if you want to see, for example, all your sales for the last month compared to your timesheet wages for the last month, the best place to do that is actually not in the Business Insights. It would be in the report section. So this report, the schedule versus timesheets versus sales report, is the one that we would recommend for this. First of all, similar to, say, the schedule page or also the timesheet page, et cetera, and even the Business Insights, at the top, make sure you choose the right location. If you want to look at only one location, only look at one location. Do you want to look at all locations? You can look at all locations. Then we have a time frame here. What's really cool about this is, it's also why it's my favorite report, is you can go extremely micro and look at a single day, or you can go extremely macro and look at, say, a whole year or 2 years worth of data, et cetera, et cetera. So you can go in there and just choose a custom data range. And then the last option is you can choose a single employee. So if you want to see the data for a single employee in a single area in one location, just make sure you choose that. For this example now, maybe choose all of them. I think it might be a little more data, right? And maybe we should look at last week, Charles. Is that? Let's have a look. Or was it this week where we had it all? This week. Perfect. Cool. Now, with that said, quick explanation on it. So we do have the scheduled hours. Actually, could you scroll a little bit down, Charles? Yeah. Perfect. So if you choose a single location with all areas, one thing that's really cool is you can untick certain areas. This is where it gets interesting when it comes to the sales data, right? If you remember at the beginning of the Q&A, when I said you can attach the sales data to a specific area. So if you choose the cafe manager for it, you would only have data, sales data, in that cafe manager area. You would not have it in any of the other ones. If you create a specific sales area for it, then you would only have the sales data in that sales area, not in all the other ones. This is where that comes into play. If you want to look at a few areas and you don't want to look at, say, manager, you want to look at everyone else, but not the manager, you can just untick the manager. There we go. What that does, if you go down, if you scroll down, Charles, it would change the grand total at the bottom because you unticked that whole area and all the timesheets and schedule and everything that was in that area. Another thing that I think is important to say again is this is looking backwards. It doesn't really make sense to use this report looking forwards. This is always looking backwards, looking at your past data. Cool. If we go up, I'm just going to quickly mention on what we see here. So we do see the scheduled hours versus timesheet, hour variance, right? So it's always theory, then reality, then the variance. Then we have the same thing with the cost, timesheet wages, salary, and then the cost variance. Just in case you're wondering why the timesheet wages and the salary cost are separated, that is, I mean, it's a decision from our product team, basically. Some of our customers love it, some don't, but it is basically the timesheet wages are in that category. People who are on a salary, their cost will be in the salary column. So if you want to see the full cost for an area for that specific time frame, you need to add those two together. Very important. And then the last three after cost variance would be the sales and the scheduled wages versus sales and the timesheet versus sales. Cool. Somebody asked a question about that. 1 second. Can you add an employee who is not in deputy to this report? That's an interesting question. No. So for your employees to show up in this report, they need to be in deputy, right? And they also need to have some data attached to them. So if you only create an employee and you put them into, you add them in deputy, but they won't have any rates, they won't have any timesheets or any schedule or anything. Basically, they will not really help you much in this report. So they do need to have data attached to them as well, meaning they need to have a schedule or they need to have timesheets. And specifically also pay rates, maybe award or some base hourly rate. They need to have those attached to them so that you can work with that data in this report. Cool. I think we probably have time for one more question. Can you please elaborate on the 9-hour example you mentioned with required staff? Okay, yeah, I think that was actually good to go over again. So if we go back to, sorry for jumping a little bit around, but if we go back to schedule, try to do this very slow so that everyone can follow. If we go back to schedule and then to business insights again, I should quickly address the daily hour budget. I think it was, Charles. Right? Why am I getting this confused? Is this what the question was about? Sorry, it was in required staff. My mistake. Required staff. Perfect. Cool. So I suppose the question is, why does this show up as 9 hours, etc.? Okay. So if we go to edit data, basically what we do here, and I know this can be sometimes a little bit confusing, but this this column that we're looking at, the Monday one, right? So think about this as hours that are in there. So when it says 6 a.m., that is the hour from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. In there, you need two, in this case, call it units, but two managers, because we're in the manager area if we look at the top, right? So two managers, think of it as they need to open the store. So I do need to have two managers in there for this hour. Then afterwards, from 7 to 8, you might already start selling the first coffees, etc. So I need to have 3 people in there. Now, that doesn't mean 3 different people or 3 new people or add 3 people or something. It just means that you do need to have in that position 3 people. So the system would probably add 1 more person because in the hour before you had only 2. The same for 8 o'clock. And then for 9 o'clock, once the coffee rush is over and we all go to the offices with our coffees, you only need 1 person for the hour from 9 to 10. So in here, you would put in units. You would do that. We've done this now for this example for only those 4 hours and only 1 day. You would do that for every hour for the whole week. Then you press save. And then what happens in the summary, if you go back, it shows that as 9 hours, because this is 9 hours worth of labor that we just put in there. The units that we put in there before, they are now shown here as hours so that we can compare it to something else. And also, if you're wondering why does it not say anything in barista or register, it's because we only created that metric now for the manager area. You would then have to do it for baristas, for people on register, for head chef, kitchen hand, etc., etc. Perfect. Cool. That was it. That was pretty much all the sort of recorded questions, and then also had our colleagues that helped out on the Q&A. We will answer all of those questions, or I think we actually have answered all of them today, in written form though, and send it out with a recording and also publish it on our page. And with that, I think we will now show you a little poll, hopefully, where you can say how you liked our webinar today, how helpful you found it, and also what type of topics you would be interested in the future. So yeah, which really helps us to sort of determine what's the next topic that we should address in a month or in the coming month. So yeah, please fill out the poll if you have a few more minutes. And with that said, thank you very much. That was fun today. I know it can be sometimes a little bit of a hard topic. If you have any questions later on, feel free to reach out to our support. Also, if you have something that's very specific to your account, please use our support channels. And with that said, have a nice day, everyone, and speak to you soon. Thank you.